Number 1. Zero Force Connection. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that would make any aspiring Padawan weep into their blue milk. The overwhelming majority of the galaxy's quadrillions of beings have absolutely zero force sensitivity. We're talking about 99.9% of all sentient life forms who couldn't levitate a pebble if their lives depended on it. These are your everyday moisture farmers, cantina owners, and even brilliant tacticians like Admiral Akbar, Mon Mothma, and Padme Amidala, who managed to shape galactic history without a single midi-chlorian worth mentioning. The average being has around 2,500 midi-chlorians per cell. Enough to be alive, not enough to sense the Force. But here's where it gets fascinating. Being Force null doesn't mean being disconnected from the Force entirely. As Yoda taught us, the Force flows through all living things, binding the galaxy together. Non-sensitives still contribute to this cosmic energy field. They just can't consciously tap into it. Think of it like Wi-Fi. Everyone's device is technically surrounded by the signal, but without the right hardware and password, you're not streaming anything. The most intriguing aspect? Some non-sensitives develop skills that almost mimic Force abilities through pure training and determination. Han Solo's legendary luck had fans theorizing for decades about latent Force sensitivity, but canon confirms he's just that good of a pilot. Similarly, characters like Chirrut Imwe from Rogue One show us that deep spiritual connection and decades of training can create warriors who seem Force-touched, even when they're not. His mantra, "I am one with the Force and the Force is with me," wasn't just wishful thinking. It was a non-sensitive achieving harmony with the cosmic energy that binds us all. Other notable non-sensitives include Jyn Erso, Cassian Andor, and even the brilliant Grand Admiral Thrawn, who relied on tactical genius rather than Force powers. What's particularly poignant is that many non-sensitives live their entire lives unaware of what they're missing. It's like being colorblind in a galaxy of rainbows. You don't know what you don't know. Yet these beings built civilizations, created art, loved deeply, and shaped galactic history just as profoundly as any Jedi Master. Number 2. Latent Force Potential. Now we enter the twilight zone of Force sensitivity, the latent sensitives. Canon sources suggest there are billions, possibly even 20 billion or more, Force sensitives scattered across the known galaxy. But here's the kicker. Most will never know it. These are beings with midi-chlorian counts just high enough to give them an edge, but not enough to attract a Jedi recruiter's attention. Picture young Anakin before Qui-Gon showed up, a slave boy who was the only human who could pod race. His reflexes were superhuman because he could unconsciously see things before they happened, a classic latent Force ability. Throughout the galaxy, you'll find mechanics who always know what's wrong with a ship before running diagnostics, sabacc players with uncanny winning streaks, or doctors whose patients mysteriously recover against all odds. They're Force sensitive, but their abilities manifest as talents or gifts, rather than recognizable Force powers. Leia Organa herself was a latent sensitive for most of her life, using unconscious Force abilities in her diplomatic and leadership roles without realizing it. The tragedy of latent sensitives is profound when you consider the numbers. During the Republic's height, the Jedi Order numbered around 10,000 Knights and Masters, with perhaps 50,000 members total, including younglings and Service Corps. That means for every trained Force user, there were potentially hundreds of thousands who never got the chance. Luke Skywalker himself would have remained a latent sensitive, probably becoming an above-average pilot for the Empire, if 2 droids hadn't crashed into his life. What determines whether a latent sensitive awakens to their potential? Often it's trauma, intense training, or exposure to other Force users. During the Clone Wars, we saw regular clone troopers occasionally demonstrate enhanced abilities under extreme stress. The Force, it seems, loves a crisis. Time to join thousands of fellow Star Wars enthusiasts. Hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into that galaxy far, far away. Trust your feelings. You know you want to. Number 3. Wild Force Awakening. Here's where things get wild. The self-taught Force users who figured it out without a Jedi Temple or Sith Academy in sight. These awakened but untrained sensitives are like musicians who learn to play by ear, creating their own understanding of the Force through trial, error, and often spectacular failure. The galaxy is littered with Force traditions that emerged independently of the Jedi and Sith. The Nightsisters of Dathomir developed their magics, their own cultural interpretation of Force use, involving rituals, incantations, and a heavy emphasis on illusion and necromancy. Mother Talzin and Asajj Ventress exemplify this tradition. The Bendu, introduced in Rebels, represents a being who found balance outside the traditional light-dark paradigm, describing himself as the one in the middle. The Guardians of the Whills on Jedha developed their own Force philosophies. These beings didn't need anyone to tell them about midi-chlorians or the Jedi Code. They felt the Force and made it their own. What's absolutely fascinating is how culture shapes Force expression in untrained users. The Lasats, like Zeb from Rebels, call it the Ashla, using it primarily for navigation and spiritual guidance. The Bardatans developed Force traditions focused on meditation and pacifism. Each culture that discovers the Force independently seems to unlock different aspects of it, suggesting that Jedi and Sith teachings might actually limit Force potential by channeling it into predetermined paths. The danger for awakened, untrained users is real and terrifying. Without proper guidance, they're susceptible to possession, madness, or accidentally tearing holes in reality. The Dathomir Witches' zombie army wasn't just macabre theater. It was what happens when Force users develop power without wisdom. Yet some, like Maz Kanata, managed to live for centuries using the Force responsibly despite never formally training. She famously told Rey, "I am no Jedi, but I know the Force," embodying the potential of self-directed Force learning. The Force priestesses on the Wellspring of Life, the Zepho from Jedi Fallen Order, and even young Grogu before his formal training all represent this tier of awakened but self-taught Force users. Number 4. Limited Force Training. Welcome to the middle management of Force users, formally trained but fundamentally limited in their potential. These are your Jedi Service Corps members, the ones who washed out of night trials, and the Inquisitors who needed cybernetic enhancements to be threatening. They've got more training than raw talent. And boy, does the galaxy make them feel it. The Jedi Order, for all its wisdom, was surprisingly brutal in categorizing Force users. Younglings who showed insufficient progress were redirected to the Agricultural Corps, Medical Corps, Educational Corps, or Exploration Corps, essentially Force-sensitive support staff. Canon and legends tell us that Obi-Wan Kenobi himself was almost sent to the Agricultural Corps on Bandamir before Qui-Gon finally chose him as a Padawan at the last minute. These beings could still use the Force for healing, growing plants, or navigation, but they'd never be lightsaber-wielding guardians of peace and justice. Imagine training your whole childhood to be a superhero only to be told you're destined for Force-powered farming. The psychological impact must have been devastating. But here's the thing that makes these limited Force users absolutely essential. They're the backbone of Force-using civilization. While Jedi Knights were off having adventures, Service Corps members were using the Force to increase crop yields on struggling planets, healing diseases that conventional medicine couldn't touch, and charting safe hyperspace routes through dangerous sectors. They're the unsung heroes whose names never make it into the epic tales, but whose work kept billions alive. The dark side equivalent is equally telling. The Empire's Inquisitors were specifically chosen from fallen Jedi, who showed enough skill to be useful, but not enough to threaten Vader or Palpatine. The Grand Inquisitor, Fifth Brother, Seventh Sister, and others were given spinning lightsabers partly as compensation for their limited abilities. Technological augmentation making up for Force deficiency. Cal Kestis, before his growth in Jedi, Fallen Order, also represents this tier, trained but cut off from his full potential by trauma and circumstance. It's a recurring theme. Limited Force users often become dependent on tools, whether it's special meditation chambers, Force-focusing artifacts, or cybernetic enhancements. Number 5. Full Force Mastery. Finally, we reach the poster children of Force sensitivity, the fully trained Jedi Knights and their Sith counterparts. These beings represent perhaps 0.00001% of all Force sensitives, the absolute cream of the crop who combined exceptional natural ability with years of rigorous training. They're the ones who make the impossible look routine. A Jedi Knight could deflect blaster bolts with their eyes closed, leap 3 stories straight up, and influence minds with a wave of their hand. But what truly separated Knights from lower tiers wasn't raw power. It was integration. They didn't just use the Force, they lived it. Every action, every decision, every breath was informed by their connection to this cosmic energy field. Obi-Wan Kenobi, around 13,500 midi-chlorians, described it perfectly. The Force will be with you, always. Other notable Knights and Masters include Mace Windu, around 12,000, Kit Fisto, around 11,800, and Qui-Gon Jinn, around 10,000, all formidable Force users with counts well above the Jedi recruitment threshold of 7,000 to 10,000. The training required to reach this level was insane. We're talking about 2 decades of constant study, starting from early childhood. Younglings began training as early as age 3, progressing through initiate trials, then years as a Padawan facing real danger, before finally facing the Knight trials that tested courage, skill, spirit, and wisdom. The washout rate was brutal. For every Anakin Skywalker who blazed through training, there were dozens who spent 15 years as Padawans, only to fail their trials. What's particularly interesting about Knights and Masters is how specialized they became. Jedi Consulars focused on Force abilities and diplomacy, while Guardians emphasized combat. Some, like Jedi Shadows, developed specific skills for hunting dark side artifacts. Count Dooku, around 13,500 midi-chlorians, was considered one of the finest duelists of his era, while Yoda, around 17,700, represented the absolute peak of traditional Jedi mastery. The Sith had similar specializations: assassins, sorcerers, and warriors, each pushing different aspects of Force mastery to extremes. Darth Sidious himself had an estimated count of 17,500 to 20,000, making him one of the most powerful Sith Lords in history. Number 6. Cosmic Force Incarnate. At the absolute apex of Force sensitivity stand beings who transcend normal classification: the Chosen Ones, the Force Wielders, and entities that blur the line between mortal and cosmic force. These aren't just powerful Force users, they're individuals whose very existence warps reality around them. Anakin Skywalker's midi-chlorian count exceeded 20,000, off the charts even by Jedi standards, higher than even Master Yoda's. He was literally conceived by the Force itself, possibly through the machinations of Darth Plagueis, or as the Force's response to growing darkness. Created to bring balance to an energy field that spans the entire galaxy, his raw potential allowed him to become the youngest Jedi Knight in history at age 19. As Vader, despite losing nearly half his midi-chlorian count after Mustafar, he could still choke officers across star systems and pull starships from the sky. His son Luke inherited enough of this potential to rebuild the entire Jedi Order from nothing, while his daughter Leia could maintain consciousness and fly through the vacuum of space, a feat that stunned audiences and proved the Skywalker legacy's power. But even the Skywalker line pales compared to the Force wielders of Mortis, the father, daughter, and son who embodied the Force itself. These beings existed outside normal space-time, their conflicts literally threatening to tear the galaxy apart. They weren't using the Force, they were the Force, personified and given form. When the Father spoke of balance, entire star systems trembled. Rey and Ben Solo represent this tier's modern evolution, a mysterious dyad in the Force, two that are one, whose connection transcended space, time, and even death. They could pass physical objects through Force bonds, heal mortal wounds by sharing life force, and their combined power could destroy or resurrect at will. This wasn't trained ability, but cosmic destiny, the Force itself choosing vessels for powers that shouldn't exist. The terrifying truth about this tier? They often don't want the power they possess. Anakin wanted to be a husband and father. Luke wanted to be a pilot. Rey wanted her parents to come back. The Force doesn't care about personal desires when it needs a chosen one. These beings become focal points for galactic destiny whether they like it or not, their very existence shaping the fate of trillions. May the Force be with you, always. If this deep dive into Force sensitivity blew your mind, share it with your fellow Star Wars fans, and comment below with which tier you'd belong to. Until next time, keep exploring that galaxy far, far away.